Taking the sea air became popular as early as the 1750s due to its medicinal qualities, and following the publishing of the statistical accounts in the 1790s, its popularity grew. Sir John Sinclair of Ulster commissioned the statistical accounts for all the parishes in Scotland, a mammoth task, but one which local ministers undertook. It was thanks to these accounts that word soon spread about the virtues of the Clyde coast. The Reverend Mr. Robert Duncan wrote in the statistical account of 1793 that the Troon is an excellent situation for sea bathing, and is much resorted to by the inhabitants of Kilmarnock and of other inland parts. By the 1840s, Troon was fast becoming a favourite place of resort for sea bathing quarters. Saltcoats, Ardrossan, Largs and other seaside towns were also beginning to see an influx of visitors for that very same reason, with people travelling from the likes of Glasgow and Paisley to breathe the clean sea air and to swim in its waters. This was a time before the railways, but with the expansion of the rail network, the influx of visitors and holidaymakers grew exponentially during the 19th century. A sweeping bay between Ardrossan and Saltcoats, with its fine sandy beaches, formed a favourite promenade to strangers in the sea bathing season, according to the new statistical account written by the Reverend John Bryce. Among people of note to stay at Ardrossan for the summer season to enjoy its sea bathing qualities were Charles Scott, the Duke of Buccleuch, Alexander Home, Earl of Home, James Carr Boyle, the Earl of Glasgow, David Boyle, the Lord Justice Clerk, Sir Alexander Muir Mackenzie of Delvine, widowed philanthropist Lady Olivia Sparrow, and Lord and Lady Mandeville. Ardrossan became popular thanks to Hugh Montgomery, the 12th Earl of Eglinton, who managed to lure genteel visitors by a large bad inn and small bad baths to resort there in summer. The Ardrossan Baths, established originally in 1807 but left to decay for many years, were sold in 1833, then refurbished and reopened. Attached to the baths was a large lodging house, which was generally occupied during the bathing season. Holiday lets by the sea began to increase in number as more and more people wanted to stay at the resorts for longer than just a day or two. At first, this was the reserve of the middle and upper classes, who would frequent the new coffee houses springing up, such as the one at Largs. It was said of Largs in the early 19th century that what could be let was let during the summer season, including the manse. The minister there had a little cottage to stay in, which was more than adequate for his needs. From the end of May until the middle of October from the 1840s onwards, an additional 300 to 400 to 1,000 people descended on the town, with it being practical to bathe at any time, and only a few yards from shore the water was deep enough to swim in. The old statistical account from Doon states that for half a century it has been a resort for a few tradespeople. In 1822, Doon was nothing more than a clachan with just 3 or 4 slated houses and the church and manse, but with the coming of steam, boats arrived with a few families from Glasgow to holiday there, and this grew into a formidable tourist trade. Travelling to both Doon and Rothsay on the Isle of Bute involved a great deal of planning to get to, and on arrival, the well-to-do folk couldn't understand their native tongue of Gaelic, so on occasion the local minister was called in to act as translator. By the mid-19th century, though, Gaelic was no longer spoken by all, and most of the locals spoke English. As time went on, improvements were made to infrastructure, including new turnpike roads for coaching services, as mentioned the coming of the railways, and steamboats. The first steamboat used on the Clyde was Comet, an enterprise run by the owner of the Bath Hotel at Helensburgh, Henry Bell. As time went on, and Helensburgh's popularity grew, pier improvements were carried out to accept larger vessels. Travel to the local islands also became increasingly popular. At Millport on Great Cumbrae, the pier was improved and visitors arrived in their droves. According to the new statistical account of May 1840, the minister, James Drummond, reported that there were 400 strangers coming to the island for sea bathing. He went on, "There are 15 houses in the county and 144 in the village, all of which are possessed, though a few of them only during the summer months, being purposely built for sea bathing quarters." Some 50 years later, the number of properties had doubled, with many being bought as holiday homes for wealthy Glaswegians. By the latter half of the 19th century, the most popular resorts were Doon and Rothesay, especially for those looking to improve their health, as they believed the sea air and temperate climate would aid their recovery. This earned Rothesay the nickname of the Madeira of Scotland. Again, new houses were being built, but according to Catherine Sinclair, the daughter of Sir John Sinclair of Ulster, who visited the island in 1840, they were as frightful as stone and lime can make them, and it was clear to her that they were styled like those in Glasgow, which she didn't appreciate. Doon was also expanded exponentially in the 19th century. This was mainly thanks to the steam packets, which brought visitors in ever greater numbers. It was from these boats that the phrase "Doon the water" became a popular tag. It was, after all, only a 4-hour boat ride from industrial Glasgow. However, much of the natural coastline was swallowed up by new villas being built, and not everyone was happy with the influx during public holidays, especially during the Glasgow Fair. Leisure facilities improved too, as esplanades and promenades were constructed in the likes of Rothesay, Gourock and Doon. Pavilions were built and new cafes and shops opened. However, problems were being created with the population increase, and as a result, new police boroughs were formed, apart from Rothesay, which was already a royal borough. Town councils were set up, and this led to better water supplies, new drainage systems, and street lighting. By the end of the 19th century, many visitors were working class and using the Sunday service to visit the coast, as that was their only day off. But this brought them into direct conflict with the Sabbatarians, who wanted to keep the Sabbath sacred. With the cheap fares and the influx of the masses, some of the rich who'd once found their resorts a haven now moved out. They sold their houses, and these were soon snapped up and turned into hotels. Those who couldn't afford to stay in the hotels could take a cheap day trip to the likes of Rothesay, which was a world away from the dirt and grime of the city. By the 1950s, going Doon the water began losing its appeal with the coming of cheap foreign travel. Yet for all that it's not as popular as it was in its heyday, people still enjoy a trip on the boats down the coast, especially due to its warmer climate, clear waters, and its pretty little islands. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.